Hello again. Welcome and thank you for coming to part 2 of our overview of Rwanda. Last time we did a broad view of Rwanda, going over some of the little nuances of the country, what it's like, some of the cultural happenings there. Today we're going to be going into their language and their cultural dimensions. In the languages we're going to be covering what it's called again, some more of the dialects and how the languages are divided up. Also be diving into a little bit of the written style. As for cultural dimensions, we're going to be looking at the context, the directness, the masculinity or femininity of the country itself. So let's dive in. Starting off with our thesis statement, language patterns and word usage are determined by the high context, high power difference, and masculine society. So we're going to start off with our speech repertoire. Kinyarwanda is the nationally spoken language. It is spoken by pretty much everyone in the country. If you do not speak Kinyarwanda, you are probably either a business person, a tourist, or someone there on missions, or an immigrant. Everyone there speaks it in the cities and in the foothills. It is considered a tonal language, but it's not entirely tonal. Most tonal languages, you'll hear the tones coming out in the vowels a lot of the time. However, from my experience, what I listened to and when I was learning their language, most of the tonal aspects of it came from their consonances, and specifically at the beginning of words. One example is ndagukubita. There's an N and the D at the very beginning, and when I was first learning to say this word, it was really tripping me up. And a lot of the Rwandan kids started to laugh at me because I couldn't get those two consonants separated and to actually say the word properly. There's another word which means God reigns, which is nijula, again involving an N, but this time it's an M followed by an N, and there were words that were very hard for me because it's not something that we deal with in the English language very often. According to a website called About World Languages, there are 7 different dialects in Rwanda, as well as the natively spoken language of Kinyarwanda. All of these are very similar to Kinyarwanda, and you're not going to hear a lot of differences. If you speak the base language, you will most likely be able to tell what everyone else is saying in the country. But those 7 different dialects are Bufangwa, Gitwa, Hutu, Ijikiga, Kiga, Ikinyanduga, and Rutwa. However, there are 2 different languages spoken in Rwanda. Those languages being English and French. French used to be the original secondary language of Rwanda as the French settled there and were pioneers there and kind of helped get Rwanda up into a less than third world country. They're still working on that aspect. But French was the predominantly spoken language if you were in the upper class because you'd be doing business with people from France. Recently though, in roughly 2009, according to a man named Chris McGreal, he wrote an article in The Guardian, which is a British newspaper, and the article is called "Why Rwanda Has Said Adieu to French." And when he was writing this article, he quoted a man named Kleber Yisa. He was the director of policy planning at the education ministry in Rwanda, and Kleber Yisa said, "Really, it is not choosing English for its own sake. This is a way to make Rwanda to be equal to use English. English is now a world language, especially in trade and commerce. Rwanda is trying to attract foreign investors. Most of these people are speaking English." So Rwanda is switching from French to English for an economic purpose and ideal to help further the economy. I spoke last time about how they're trying to get their infrastructure up and running so that it's not so much of a third world country to attract more tourists and more investors into the country. And this is one of the ways they're doing this. Also, UK has become one of the biggest donors to Rwanda since the genocide happened in 1994. So these are all different reasons why English is now becoming the predominant secondary language. If you're an upperclassman or you had higher education, you are now learning English, and French is no longer being learned in schools. When I was working with students or kids from Rwanda a few years ago, all of them were learning English and speaking English, one, because they're coming to America, but it was also in 2010, 2011 when I was working with these youth. And they had to learn the English because that is what was being taught in their schools at that point, because Rwanda has figured out that English is now the world's spoken language, and the French have a lot less influence in Rwanda than it used to. The last thing I want to look at is the actual typology or written aspect of Kinyarwanda. And Kinyarwanda is based out of a Latin script. So when my friends from Rwanda post on Facebook, as they so often do, I have no idea what they're saying most of the time. I haven't learned the language fluently, but I can make out and try to sound out the words that they're saying, that they're writing out there, because it's written in Latin script that English is written in, and so I recognize all the characters that's being said. Do I know what they mean? No. Can I pronounce the words? Maybe. Also, the language development in Rwanda has developed significantly further than just written aspects and spoken. They're now using their languages on radio. They have literature out, dictionaries, and there is a Bible translated in Kinyarwanda for them to learn in their own native tongue. Next, I want to jump into cultural dimensions. Most of the information I'm going to be pulling from here is from a site called Global Affairs Canada, and it has a really useful page about the cultural information on Rwanda, where people were allowed to ask questions about Rwanda, and people who were actually trained and experts in the culture of Rwanda replied, and it was posted on the Canadian forum. Forum's a bad word, put website, and it was done in a very professional manner. So first off, is Rwanda a masculine or feminine society? It's actually very much a masculine society. First off, personal life is very private and it is not discussed. It is considered taboo to talk about it, and it's definitely considered taboo to talk about ethnicity. Secondly, and the most obvious reason why it's a masculine society, is emotions are not to be shown in public. Emotions are something that you only show with your close relatives or your close friends, and if they're your friends, they are your very close friends, your best of friends. At most, you'll have humor coming out in public, but even so much joy isn't the most exuberant emotion shown. Anger and sorrow are definitely not shown. It's very repressed to only be dealt with in a private manner. It is also a patriarchal society, so men are the dominant role. However, that is shifting. If you look in the major cities, there are women living outside or working outside of the homes. This is also due to the genocide as well, when a lot of the men were killed, and so women had to take up jobs in order to feed the families. And so it is now shifting towards more of a neutral patriarchal society where women now have say, but as you go out to the tribal areas and on the hills, you'll still see that the patriarchal society really shows. Next up, collectivist versus individualistic. Rwanda comes out as a collectivist society. People help each other. They use their connections, especially for jobs. If you know someone who has a job and you're looking for one and you have that relative there, you say, hey, brother, think you can give me a job? Or hey, dad, can I get a raise? And if you have that personal connection in the job, you are much more likely to get the job or the raise. Also, in Rwanda, you are expected to attend the funerals and weddings, not only of your colleagues, but of your colleagues' families. So if your coworker's brother dies, you're expected to attend that funeral. It's a very collective society. They also share a lot. Personal story, when I was touring with the choir from Rwanda, Africa, we were on the bus all the time. And it didn't matter who had what food, but all the students came with different packed lunches when we were traveling from one city to the next, or for the day, that their host homes packed for them. But at any given point, I could even walk up, because I'd been accepted as part of their culture at that time, I could walk up and say, hey, can I have some of that? Half the time I wouldn't have to ask. I could just take it, and they would have no qualms with it. And they would do that with each other as well. Their brothers and sisters would constantly be taking each other's food, and it was totally normal. Next up, high power versus low power distances. Rwanda is very much a high power distance society. It is less so than it used to be. During the genocide, it was a very, very high power distance society where those who were on top lorded their authority over those who were underneath. However, now that's lessened. There's been some equality working out, but the high power distance still shows, such as you cannot look into your superior's eyes. If you do, you are trying to say that you are on top, or at least equal to them, but there's a reason they're your superior in their culture, and that's because they have greater expertise in the area field that they're in. Outside looking in, it could also be because they have better family connections. The superior in the situation also makes the decisions. It's not a group decision. It doesn't matter what the people below think. Whoever's in charge, whether it's the chief, the president, or just the CEO of a company, or the business owner, they get to make the decision, and it's not a group decision. High context versus low context. Rwanda is a very high context society. Before having a conversation with them about getting into business, you must go through pleasantries of just saying, hey, it's a nice day. However, as we talked about earlier, their private lives are private, or their personal lives are private. So it's actually not really welcome to ask about how their family is doing, unless, again, you have that close personal relationship with them. But talking about pleasantries, about how the day is going, or about the economy, very much accepted and expected. They also don't say what they mean. Personal story again, I was working with the choir director from Rwanda. Her name was Barbara Kayaga. And I managed to make her really mad one day because this is coming from a few different cultural dimensions, but I decided to do a sound check. And she wasn't around, so I got the kids up on stage to do the sound check, and I ran the sound check. Barbara Kayaga got very mad at me. I had no idea why. She would not talk to me, she would not look at me, and I'd be like, Barbara, what's going on? Please tell me, can we resolve this? And if she did, she would say things like, you should know. Or, those aren't your kids. Those aren't your kids. That meant nothing to me. Where I'm from, as a sound technician, when there's a sound check to be done, I can say, all right guys, get on stage, do your thing, we got the sound check done, and we're ready to go. But I didn't know that, and I wouldn't know that until a while later, which I'll come back to towards the end of this presentation. Is Rwanda being or doing? From my observances, these are very much of being people, and from what I have seen online, and specifically from Global Affairs again, they are a being type people. It's not so much about what they have to do, what they have to get accomplished. If they have something due tomorrow, they don't get it done, so what? It doesn't matter. If they like to spend a lot of their time just being who they are and worrying about their own their own goodness of life, their own well-being in life. Are they emotionally good? Do they need to be doing things actively all the time? No, they're very good to just relax, sit back, and enjoy what's going on. Which immediately blends into our next and last cultural dimension that I'm going to cover here, and that's a polychronic. Guess I spoiled that one, which chronic they were. They're polychronic, guess that. And this one I got to talk to one of my youth from Rwanda, Africa. His name is Charles Tuyishime. Tuyishime means pleasing to God. And Charles talked about church and Christmas specifically. At church, they might set a time for when church starts and ends, but if that time says 2 hours, there's a good chance that they're there for 3 to 4 hours. It doesn't matter about time, it's about worshiping God. Christmas is the same deal. They go to church on Christmas and no one knows how long they'll be there. They'll just be there worshiping God for as long as they feel necessary. They're very much people who care about people first. If someone comes to their house, they're going to accept them in, even if they have to be to work next soon. They care about people, they care about worship, and their timing can be very frustrating here in America. Again, another personal story about when our cultures clashed, when they were in America and I was working with them. It's clashed so much that I got the nickname from the organization president, William Ngabo. I got the nickname Umukozi, which means hard worker, because I always wanted to get things done on time. I knew when things needed to be done. I knew when I had the time schedule all allotted. I knew exactly how long it was going to take to set up, and I'd want to get things done in order setting up for the concert. However, the Rwandan people were they were okay with just sitting back, relaxing, and not worrying about what's to come. They would tell me things like, we'll get it done. David, we'll get it done. Umukozi, we'll get it done. Don't worry about it. Take a load off. Sit back. Enjoy time with us. Do devotions with us. Just talk to us. But I was very time-oriented in my monochronic ways, because I am rather monochronic myself, and wanted to get things done in a timely manner. I figured we could work first and then relax and be in relationship later. That was something that was very difficult for me to break. The first tour did not go well. The second tour went a lot better. However, even though they're a polychronic time, their businesses, once you're actually at work, can become a little bit more monochronic to them. They actually do worry about time in their meetings, make sure that they're done when they say they're going to be done. And so there can be aspects of that. However, the people I worked with were all ministry, and ministry people already are terrible at being polychronic, and so I got to work with African ministers. So it was super polychronic. Ending off, we're going to talk about the effects of the cultural dimensions on the patterns of communication. First off, we're going to talk about superiors. Like I'd already said, eye contact is not to be shared with your superiors. Eye contact can actually be seen as brash if you don't know the person at all. And if they're superior, it's considered extremely brash and extremely rude. Secondly, older people can call children, or they'll change their word usage depending on age difference. Doesn't mean that the words they're using means, the words they use does not necessarily indicate that the person they're calling is like 5 or 6. It just means that they are younger than them. So if they were to call a student over, if I was to call some students over, I would put out my hand, and with all my fingers I would just bring it inward, and that would call the students to me without words. However, if I was looking for all boys, I would do that as well, that same gesture, and say umuhungu. All the boys would listen and come over. Or umukobwa for all the girls, and they would come over. If I wanted all of them, I'd be abana, which means kids. That one is actually indicative of age. Children, though, will call those older than them and to your uncle to show respect. I still get Facebook messages today saying, Uncle David, do you remember me? Or Uncle Umukozi, do you remember me? I was like, of course I remember you. How could I forget your beautiful face? Let's talk. Is this a shame culture or more of a justice culture? This is a very heavily shame culture. They will do everything they can to save face, including lie to you in order to save face. They have a high uncertainty avoidance because they won't even speak up in meetings if their English or their French isn't perfect because they don't want to look foolish in front of other people. And so saving faces is everything they can do. Again, Barbara Kayaga, that interaction that we had where I called her kids up to stage and she wouldn't tell me what was going on. She waited until we were in a private manner a couple hours after the concert, which caused a little bit of a rift in the whole process for me, to talk to me about what I had done. She wanted to save face and wanted to do it in the most with the most humility possible to make sure that both of us came out of that looking good and that it wasn't done in front of anybody else, which I actually appreciated after the fact and learned how their culture worked a little bit better and was able to adapt myself to them. Lastly, we have jokes. Jokes can be said with people that you have a relationship with. However, my personal source of humor is sarcasm. That is very serious to them. They take it literally, they don't always understand it, and you can be very offensive if you use sarcasm. So when I go over, I can't do that. However, jokes that they do find really funny, any joke that's self-deprecating. Luckily for me, I'm really good at those too. So in conclusion, we've looked at the speech and we've looked at the cultural dimensions, and it's because of the high context, high power difference in the masculine society that the language patterns and gestures are done the way that they are. They very much care about saving face, and they want to be in a relationship with as many people as possible. So thank you for coming tonight, and I hope you will join me again for part 3. Have a great night.